Hey everybody, it's Jim from Cigars. Whether you're a new smoker or somebody who's been smoking cigars for quite a while, I bet you've experienced this. You look at your cigar stash at your humidor and you say, what was I thinking? Hopefully that doesn't happen very often, but that's what this video is about. Ways for you to build and manage your cigar collection to maximize the enjoyment that you have from cigars and minimize the regret. So let's get started. If you're like me, you get bombarded with emails and texts all day long about cigar deals that you better not pass up because they're never going to happen again. So my first suggestion is to embrace the mantra I'm going to give you. I actually have this written on a Post-it and keep it on the screen of my computer where I see it. It says, cigar deals are like city buses. You miss this one and another one will be along pretty soon. But what I actually do is I have a waiting period. When I get an email like that and I look at it, oh man, this is such a good deal. I say, okay, minimum 2 hour wait until I pull the trigger on it, and preferably overnight. And more often than not, I'll wake up the next morning and say, oh, I can live without that one. I'll wait for the next deal to come along. My next suggestion, this is an interesting exercise to do, and I actually did this in preparation for the video, and I came up with something that surprised me a little bit. Inventory your cigar collection about every month or couple months. And I'm not talking about writing it down and doing a spreadsheet and stuff like that. If you want to do that, that's fine, but it doesn't have to be that formal. But what I look at is various factors to make sure that my cigar collection is matching my current taste in cigars. Because one thing I talk about in my video is cigar tastes do change over time. So you always want your cigar collection to reflect that. What I try to look at when I'm doing my informal cigar inventory is I look at the brand mix that I have. Do I have too many of one type of wrapper, too many of one flavor profile? I look at the boldness to make sure I have a good spectrum, but also heavier in areas where I'm interested in at that particular time. Last but not least, I look into size because a lot of the closeout stuff that you see on cigar websites and the emails that you get and so forth are weird sizes. They go a lot for Gordo sizes, 6 inches by 60 and bigger than that even. And if you like that size cigar, that's great. But for the average smoker, I think you want to have a broad spectrum, and that's what I like to have, of different sizes and shapes of cigars. When I did my inventory, and it shouldn't have come as a surprise to me, but it did a little bit in terms of actually putting a number to it, is the preponderance of Oliva cigars in my cigar collection. It's like 35%, which is much more than I thought it was. I love Oliva cigars, but I also like to experience all types of cigars, and that surprised me to have that many of one particular brand. Here's another idea. Set an average cost per stick that you want to try to target. And I know that's hard to do because you want to indulge yourself now and then with an expensive cigar, and you want to buy some inexpensive ones too now and then. But if you set a target price as an average, it helps you kind of keep things in perspective. Next, let's talk about buying quantities. And that's where I think the biggest trap is for a lot of cigar smokers. You see promotions for great big bundles and mesos and boxes of 24 and all that kind of stuff. And it's easy to succumb to that, but if you think about it, if you buy, let's say, 5 boxes of cigars, and I've seen people on social media sites that I go to where they have 5 or 6 or 8 boxes of cigars piled up and say, hey, look what I bought today. So let's say 5 boxes of cigars. That at 24, that would be 120 cigars. If you smoke 3 cigars a week, let's say, you pretty much have locked yourself in for almost the whole year. You're going to have to go and buy a bunch of new ones if you want variety in your humidor. So my suggestion is stick to singles, 5-packs, the occasional sampler. And if you want to go for boxes, there are a lot of boxes now are sold in the 10 to 13 quantity, which isn't going to hurt too bad. Speaking of boxes, if you're an experienced smoker, I know you've been through this, but you're gonna run into situations where it's just too good to pass up, or there's a cigar that is particularly box worthy for you. And I think that's an important term, box worthy. Is this worth investing in an entire box of this cigar? I'll buy a box of Padron 3000s once in a while, go through them over the course of maybe 8 months or a year, and then I'll restock them because I think that's a cigar worth having in my collection all the time. And regarding samplers, I think it's important to be careful. I've gotten caught in this a lot of times, so I'm just kind of passing my experience on to you. But I've gotten caught in situations where I see one or two, let's say it's a sampler of 12 cigars, two of each type. And I'll see one or two of those and I go, oh, that's a cigar I really like. So I buy the sampler and then the rest of the cigars aren't that hot and I have some regret that I bought them. So what I do now when I look at samplers, I'll look at the individual cigars offered in it and I'll rate them good, neutral, or not so good. And it's got to have mostly good cigars in there and the rest of them mostly neutral. There's going to be a couple ones that you don't know about in there, ones that are probably low end because they like to balance out the pricing and keep their average price low for what they're selling. But a couple of them can present an opportunity. They might be diamonds in the rough and something that you really like, or they could be stinkers. You never know. Stay away from samplers that have a couple of really good cigars in it and the rest of them not very good. So those are my tips, and a lot of them are learned from my my mistakes. So you can take advantage of that. And as you can see, there's actually some inconsistencies. I say don't buy boxes, and then I buy a box. And so you have to kind of use your own judgment. But keeping these guidelines in mind, I think, will help you in terms of building your cigar collection and minimize the amount of regret you have ending up with cigars that you don't smoke. All right, I will see you next time from Cigars, Cigars, Cigars.